As fish keepers, we often find ourselves with the need to move water from one location to another. Be it a custom filtration system or even a simple tank drain line, the need for seamless piping is the same. And for this purpose, PVC piping is a common go-to solution. It's inexpensive, readily available, and easy to work with. You can even use it to transport pressurized air from a central air pump to multiple tanks at various locations. But some of these solutions can become quite complex, and even the most simple will still require at least a few connections of various pipes and fittings. So how do you properly connect these pipes to ensure solid joints and no risk of leaks? How do we prevent water damage to our home or failure of the systems that our fishy friends rely on? In today's DIY class, we're going to learn how to cement PVC pipe and create absolutely seamless connections. Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by. Alright, let's get started by covering what we have to work with here. What we have is your typical Schedule 40 PVC pipe. This right here is a 3/4 inch pipe, just because that's what I had lying around to work with. What we also have are some 3/4 inch PVC connections. We have some right angles, we have some 45-degree angles, we have a coupler. We also have a pair of joint pliers, which really help out in a pinch. Get it? Pinch? All right. A Sharpie to make some markings. We'll get to that. Also some hand ratchet cutters. So I highly recommend investing in a pair of these if you're going to be doing much in the way of PVC piping. These really make the cutting so simple. The mobility they offer and the ease of use is well worth the $20-30 they're going to cost you. And then most importantly, we have the primer and the cement. So let's talk about the primer. There's an important point here. I recommend the clear primer. Always use the clear primer. You can actually buy this in clear or purple. However, as fish keepers, our piping systems are often visible or even on display. And the purple primer just looks it's terrible. It's just awful. So don't get the purple, get the clear. But then we also have the cement, obviously a critical component. And what I have here is the regular clear cement. And note that this regular clear cement on the label says it works for PVC. It's important to always read the labels and know what you have to work with. Now, the process we're going to review today will work on any schedule of PVC. Be it Schedule 40, Schedule 80, and any color of PVC. It will also work on CPVC or ABS pipes, assuming you buy the proper cement. And that would just be the all-purpose cement, not the regular cement. But the vast majority of us fish keepers will only ever need to use Schedule 40 PVC. Let's get started. First, we need to open up the cement and the primer. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I actually have trouble opening these containers with my bare hands. Those lids are on pretty tight. So I like to grab a wrench or a pair of pliers, and you don't squeeze the lid too tight so that you're going to break it or damage the bottle, but you just get a good grip on it and twist it to the right, and it'll loosen right up. So we can then go ahead and open it up all the way, and we'll do the same thing with the cement. And the lid actually doubles as the applicator. You see this cottony round at the end of it, which will absorb the primer and cement and then allow you to spread that across the PVC. Okay, let's say we're running a length of 3/4 inch pipe, maybe for an airline, and we want to add an elbow. Say there's a wall here, or better yet, let's assume that there's a piece of equipment here that we want to avoid. So we need to add an elbow, a length of additional pipe, and another elbow, so that we can continue the run but avoid whatever equipment is located here. So first up, we would need to cut another section of pipe to go here. Now obviously you would want to measure out your specific needs. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to cut any old length. So we will grab a piece of stock pipe here, and let's grab our hand ratchet cutters. So what you're going to do is you're going to open open this handle up, and that will open up the blade. And you'll notice that when you start to close it, it catches on these grooves here. So then it's ready to cut. So you grasp it firmly, and you're going to want to set it on the pipe, get a nice square set. And then start closing with your hands until you come up against the PVC. And at this point, make sure again that you have a nice square set. You do not want to have angles in your cut. So make sure it's nice and square, and then you just start squeezing tighter. Now for the first cut, sometimes you really have to bear down on it. Maybe use both hands. But once you get going, it really gets easier. There we go. And then it cuts right through. Now before you actually make your cut, keep in mind that in your measurements for your pipe length, you need to account for how far into the connector it will go. So you can see that in the connector, there's actually a little ridge there, and that is where the pipe will stop. It'll butt up right against that. So what you want to do is you can measure that length, and if that's not possible, like if the pipe is too small to get a measuring tape in there, you could force one in as far as it'll go and then mark it and then measure that. Or there's a ton of information online where you can just search the specific part and find the dimensions for that. Okay, so we have our pieces cut and laid out. Quick side note here, in many of your piping systems, it's actually going to be better to not use 90-degree angles, but instead use two 45-degree angles. The reason for this is the added resistance that a 90-degree angle imposes on your flow. So two 45-degree angles will allow for much better flow rates, be it water or air, than a 90-degree angle. This configuration is not always possible, especially if we're working in tight spaces, but if you can do it, I recommend it. But for now, let's use the 90-degree angles. So what do we do next? We have our pieces cut. Let's dry fit them. And that sounds like exactly how it sounds. You take the pieces and you put them on dry so that you know how your configuration is going to look. And here we actually have a great example of why you want to dry fit, because even something simple like this, if you're not careful, you can create a warping in your line. So if we were to have cemented this, this would now permanently be not good. And a trick that we can use to help us out is, while you're dry fitting, make sure everything's perfect, flatten it out, and add some marks. So what this does is helps us visually identify if something is out of alignment during the gluing process. Now, if your systems are going to be visible or on display, another tip is to use a dry erase marker rather than a Sharpie, like what I just used. Okay, let's make some connections. We want to focus on just one at a time. And the first thing we do is make sure that the end of our pipe is clean and free of any debris. If there's any other little bits of PVC stuck to it, give it a good sanding. That's most applicable if you use a saw other than your ratchet hand cutters. And you're also going to want to have something underneath the piping to catch any excess cement. You can use a rag. I prefer paper towels because I don't want to waste a bunch of rags, because anything that this stuff touches will get ruined. That includes your clothes, by the way. So we're all good to go. Now the key here is to work quickly. Don't rush it so that you mess up anything, but you do have only about 15 seconds to work from the point of applying the primer and cement. So let's get going. I'm going to open up the primer, and we're going to take this applicator, I'm going to dab off some of the excess, we don't need that much, and we're going to apply a liberal coating to the pipe and the fitting, the inside of the fitting there. And while the primer is still wet, that's important, while it's still wet, we then apply the cement. We put it on the end of the pipe that's being inserted. We then apply it to the fitting, and then just to be sure we're good, get a little bit more and put it on the end of the pipe again. And then you shove it in. Now, a key here, make sure you turn it a quarter turn after you push it in. And that's where those markings we previously made really help out. The quarter turn is key. And after you insert it, hold it in place for at least 10 to 20 seconds. If you don't hold it in place, it could pop out. Now, after you've held it in place for a few seconds, what you want to do is wipe off the excess. And there we go. This is now a solid right angle. This has actually been chemically fused together. This is not a glue. The cement has actually weakened the molecules of the pipe and the molecules of the connection. And then when it dried, the molecules re-hardened, and right here, this is now all one doubly thick piece of PVC. Let's go ahead and make the other connections now. We apply the primer, first to the pipe to be inserted and then into the fitting. Then while the primer is still wet, we apply the cement, first to the pipe, then to the fitting, and then to the pipe again. And be sure to use a liberal amount. It's better to err on the side of overdoing it than underdoing it. And then we insert the pipe, and be sure to give it at least a quarter turn to really spread out that cement and ensure full coverage. Then we hold it together for a few seconds so that the pressure of the cement does not force the pipe out. We wipe off the excess, and there we have it. This is now a seamless PVC run with two 90-degree angles. You can use the same process to extend the length of a straight line using a coupler, or you can build in a ball valve so that you can control or completely shut off the flow of water. These piping systems have a very high degree of customization and are very useful for us as fish keepers. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning about PVC with me today, and I hope you find a use for this new skill at some point in the future. Stay tuned to the channel, as we're always going to be putting out great content and other DIY instructional videos.